Lesson 2-4 is on multiplying and dividing rational numbers. So we're going to be multiplying and dividing fractions and decimals. We're going to start off with going over a couple examples of multiplying fractions, okay, or mixed numbers. So when we multiply fractions, we multiply straight across. We take top times top and bottom times bottom. We do not need a common denominator when we multiply fractions. The first thing, though, that we are going to look to do is we're going to look to simplify the problem first before we multiply. We can look to reduce top to bottom. So can I reduce 2/5? Well, in this case, I can't. It's already in simplest form. Same thing with 1/8. I can't reduce it top to bottom there. But we are also able to cross reduce, okay, diagonally. All right, so we ask ourselves, what can I divide both of those numbers by? All right, 2 and 8, we can divide them both by 2, so we're able to cross reduce. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, 8 divided by 2 is 4. So 2 goes in 8 4 times. So we're able to reduce diagonally. We call that cross reducing. Now that's going to make that problem look a little bit nicer and multiply with a little bit easier numbers. All right, I can't cross reduce 1 and 5, so I have it as simplified as I can. So let's figure out if my answer is going to be positive or negative. Remember what we talked about in multiplying and dividing integers. If we have the same signs, our answer is positive. If we have different signs, our answer is negative. We do not ask ourselves which of these fractions or decimals is farther from 0. We only do that when we add and subtract. So same signs positive, different signs negative. I have a negative and a positive fraction, different signs. My answer I know is going to be negative. So I'm going to get that in my answer so I don't forget that negative sign right away. Now, like I said, we multiply top times top, bottom times bottom. 1 times 1 is 1. 5 times 4 is 20. So negative 1/20 is our answer. All right, 7 6 times 2/5. We're going to look to cross off our, kind of check mark our reducing rules. So can I reduce here? No. Can I reduce here? Also no. Now we also know we can cross reduce. Can I cross reduce 7 and 5? Is there a number that we can divide 7 and 5 by? No, there is not a number that goes into 5 and 7 besides 1, right? And 2 and 6. Is there a number that goes into 2 and to 6? Yes, 2. 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 6 3 times. And now we just need to multiply straight across. 7 times 1 is 7, 3 times 5 is 15. On that one, I had both positive fractions, so my signs were the same, so my answer is positive. All right, here we go, next one. Now, just like last lesson with adding and subtracting, we want to make both sides look like a fraction or an improper fraction. So we need to convert this mixed number to an improper fraction. Multiply, 3 times 1 is 3, then add. 3 plus 1 is 4. So 4/3 times 9/20. Once again, we need to ask ourselves what we can reduce. 4/3 cannot be reduced. 9/20 cannot be reduced. Now we want to look to cross reduce. 4 and 20. That works, right? We can divide both of those numbers by 4. 4 goes into 4 once. 4 goes into 20 5 times. What about 3 and 9? Well, 3 goes into 3 1 time. 3 goes into 9 3 times. Cross reducing just saves us reducing our fraction at the end. It might be kind of a bigger looking fraction where there's a bigger number on top and a bigger number on the bottom. This just saves us having to reduce at the end. So 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 5 is 5. 3/5. All right. Now, with dividing fractions, we are basically going to be doing the same thing as we did when we multiply fractions, all right? But there's one step that we have to do first. We actually aren't going to divide fractions. We're not going to do it. So what we're going to do is the strategy is called skip, flip, multiply. Or we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. If I take the reciprocal of this pen, see the points at the top and the caps at the bottom? If I took the reciprocal of it, that's what I would do. I would flip it. Now the cap is at the top and the point is at the bottom. So when we multiply by the reciprocal, we just flip the fraction, okay? So skip, flip, multiply, or multiply by the reciprocal. It means the same thing, just different terminology. So what we're going to do is we're going to always leave that first fraction alone. So I'm just going to bring it down, negative 6/5. We are now going to flip or multiply by the reciprocal the second fraction. So now it's no longer negative 1/2. We're going to flip it to negative 2/1. Now this allows us to multiply, which we just learned how to multiply, so that's going to be nice. We don't have another rule to follow when we divide. So we really don't divide by fractions. We just multiply by the reciprocal or skip, flip, multiply. Skip over the first fraction, leave it alone. Flip the second fraction or take the reciprocal of it and then multiply. Now we're back to square one, right? Multiplying fractions. Can I reduce? Nope. Can I reduce 2/1? Also no. 6 and 1 I cannot cross reduce, and 2 and 5 I cannot cross reduce. So now we just need to multiply straight across. Top times top, bottom times bottom. Signs are the same. Negative times a negative is a positive. 6 times 2 is 12. 5 times 1 is 5. And we are going to leave those as improper fractions again today. So positive 12/5. All right, we got to change those both to fractions or improper fractions first, right? 5 times 5 is 25. Plus 1 is 26. And it stays a negative fraction. 2 times 3 is 6. Plus 1 is 7/3. So notice I didn't change this to a multiplication yet. Just keep the division sign there. Change your mixed numbers to improper fractions first, and then we will skip, flip, and multiply. So don't get carried away and go too fast and change that to multiplication. So leave it as division. All we've done is change mixed numbers to improper fractions. Now, once I have it look like this, where I have fractions on each side, I'm going to skip, flip, and then change that to multiply, okay? So we're gonna skip, we're going to flip or multiply by the reciprocal and change the division to a multiplication, all right? So now we have different signs. So my answer is negative. 26 times 3 is 78. And then 5 times 7 is 35. Once again, I'm just going to ask you to leave that as an improper fraction for now. All right, moving on. Multiplying decimals. So now we're going on to decimals, multiplying and dividing decimals. When we have two decimals being multiplied, just like multiplying or adding and subtracting, we will stack them one on top of the other. Now, in this case, you're going to put the decimal that has more numbers with it on top. In this case, they both have two numbers in the decimals, so it really doesn't matter what we put on top. So in this case, the bigger absolute value does not have to go on top, just the decimal that has more numbers. So 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 3 is 15. Add a 0. Once you get done with a number, add a 0. 3 times 5 is 15. Carry the 1. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. And now we need to add those. 0, 10, 1, 2, and 7 is 9. Now what we do to figure out where to put our decimal, we don't just drop it straight down anymore. We count all the numbers behind the decimal. So there's a 5 that's behind the decimal and a 6 that's behind the decimal. So that's two numbers, the 5 and the 6. So there's two numbers behind the decimal. So I will start at the end and move it back 1, 2. And that's where I put my decimal. So 9.00 or just 9, okay? And because my signs were different, we had a negative 9, okay? Dividing decimals. Okay, we always put the first number on the inside, second number on the outside. We do not want to have this number look like a decimal, so we're going to kind of change it a little bit. We're going to move our decimal so it's at the end, and we're working with a whole number. All right, so we need to move it as many times as we need to get it so it's at the end of the number. So in this case, I want to move that decimal so it's at the end. Okay, it took me one time to move it. Okay, so now it's not 2 2/10, it's 22. If I move this decimal to the right one, I got to move the 8th decimal to the right one. Now, we didn't see the decimal in 8, but we know if there's no decimal there, it's actually at the end. So if I move this to the right one, I'm going to move this to the right one, and then I need to add a 0 in its spot, and now the decimal's at the end. So now instead of 8, it's 80, and instead of 2.2, it's 22. Now, 22 goes into 80 3 times. 22 times 3 is 66, and we need to subtract. We borrow. Okay, after we subtract, we need to bring a decimal straight up and a 0 down. Okay, now we need to ask ourselves, how many times does 22 go into 140? 6 times. Okay, 6 times 22 is 132. Subtract, we get 8. Bring down a 0. Okay. Now, we need to ask ourselves, how many times does 22 go into 80? Well, we already asked ourselves that 3 times. Okay. 66. That pattern is going to continue. All right. So it's going to be 3.63 repeating. Okay. Last example. Putting that first number on the inside. Second number on the outside. In this case, we need to move our decimal 2 times to the right, okay, because we don't want a decimal out in front. So that number is now a 3, and then if I move this 2 times to the right, that number is now 18, and 3 goes into 18 6 times. A negative divided by a positive is a negative, so negative 6 is our answer. All right, homework, page 68 and 69, 1 and 2. You'll do 14 through 34 even numbers, and then 47 through 51.